everyone, it's Nicole, and today I'm here to talk about one of my favorite tropes in fiction. I possess a rusty heart, but even my heart melts when I read about chosen families. Because a lot of people need these types of novels. It helps them realize that they don't have to cling to something that's abusive, that's toxic, and they can find and cultivate a new family that's going to be supportive and that's going to uplift them. I feel a lot of feelings about chosen family trope. I think part of the reason is because I'm queer, and the second part is because it's holiday season when I'm filming this video. I've made a list of my favorite books and series that feature chosen family as a topic, and I encourage you to leave your favorites in the comment section. The first book that I'm going to mention is the one that I've read not a long time ago. It is The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein by Kiersten White, and from the title alone you can already tell that it's a retelling of Frankenstein, and it is from the point of view of Elizabeth Frankenstein, who is an adopted daughter of the Frankenstein family. And I really enjoyed the point of view switch on the classic. It's a young adult novel that follows Elizabeth Lavenza. It's her original name when she is adopted into the Frankenstein's family to be a live-in companion of their son, Victor Frankenstein. Victor is a very smart but weird boy who doesn't really know how to communicate with others, and his parents are afraid of him for reasons unknown. Victor has everything, but he doesn't have a friend, and Elizabeth is the person to fill that role. Elizabeth appreciates the opportunity because her past life was horrific. She quickly finds a way to become Victor's friend, even though she realizes that he's pretty weird and that there's something darker about him that she can't pinpoint. But since her livelihood depends on him, she doesn't complain. The story starts when they're slightly older, in their late teens, when Victor moves out of his parents' house in pursuit of an invention. Elizabeth understands that her life is going to take a very dark turn if she's not going to get him back home, because he's the only reason why Frankensteins are keeping her in the house, and she comes after him to convince him to get back home. The dynamics in the story are deeply disturbed and extremely fascinating to read about. Elizabeth is clearly a Slytherin, and as a true Slytherin she understands that she has to be a friend of certain people to be safe, and that what keeps her relationship with Victor strong, but also she builds her own family along this journey, and she deeply cares about these people. I loved both the theme of doing everything to keep yourself safe and building your own family explored in the book. And I think that Elizabeth is a fantastic character that a lot of people are going to love. A book that I couldn't miss when talking about chosen family is The Miseducation of Cameron Post. I think it's one of the major topics of this book. The story follows a young girl named Cameron Post who moves into the house of her conservative aunt named Ruth after the car crash that took the lives of her parents. She's oddly relieved by the accident because it means that her parents are never going to know that she's queer and that she developed feelings for one of her friends. But she doesn't know how much of a hell living with Ruth is going to be. One day when she's older, she meets a girl named Kelly Taylor. They become fast friends, and she realizes that once again she develops feelings for a girl. And this time it's especially dangerous because her aunt starts to suspect something. Eventually, of course, Cameron gets caught by her aunt, and in an attempt to fix her, her relatives send her to God's Promise, which is a camp that promises to heal Cameron from homosexual desire. This book is very uplifting and hopeful. A lot of it is due to Cameron's personality and the people that she decides to build relationships with, as she realizes that she's normal and everything is fine with her. It's people around her that feel uncomfortable with her sexuality, not herself. I really love the message behind this book. It's one of my favorite books ever, and I really need to read it because it makes my heart warm all the time. The topic of chosen family is crucial to many queer stories because it's realistic, it's something we experience, and it's a message that every young queer person has to receive and has to believe in to move forward. That's why I really love this book, and I think that's a very important read for every queer person out there. The third book on the list is Radio Silence by 𝕊𝕊𝕻𝕻𝕆❄. I read this book in 2018 and it became one of my favorites. It's about a young girl named 𝕊𝕊𝕻𝕆ℎ𝕋 who is known in her school for being a very educated and very goal-oriented. Everyone thinks that her only goal is to get into a prestigious university, and for most part it's true, but she also has a hobby. She loves listening to a scripted fantasy podcast and make fan art for it. She's a pretty great artist, and one day the creator of the podcast notices her art and proposes to make official art for their podcast. She's very pumped about the opportunity, and when she discovers who's the creator of the podcast is, she's shocked because she knows this guy and he is not someone she expected him to be. It's a fantastic read. It has wonderful characters and the development of their relationships is addicting, to say the least. The relationship between a lad and Frances is the driving force, and it's not a romantic relationship, which is even better. It's about building friendships and building new families and building new communities. I loved this book. I couldn't really put it down because of this book, as it was written for me. Of course, I have to mention All for the Game or the Foxhole Court series by Nora Sakavic, because the most important part of this story is how all these characters who are rejects find a new home for themselves in other people. And it's the most beautiful message. I also really enjoyed this story. I think it's very engaging, it's very fun, and I think it's also very addicting. The story is about Neil Johnston, who's the new addition of the Palmetto State University AXA team, and at the same time is a runaway son of a famous crime lord named Butcher. AXA is a made-up sport that resembles field hockey. Joining the team is a bad decision because the team is high profile and it means that his face might be broadcasted on national TV. But Neil is tired of running and he feels joyful when he plays the sport. Palmetto State University team is known for taking in outcasts and rejects, kids with difficult pasts, histories of addiction, and etc. In the team, the kids are given a second chance, and I think that makes the connections between them stronger. Even though a lot of the first book and some parts of the second and third books are complete nonsense, I still love the series so much. I love the connections. I think what pulls it together is the chosen family trope, and I enjoyed the development of relationships between these teammates more than I enjoyed the plot of the story. Another series where the connections between characters are equally as important is The Raven Boys by Megan Stiefwater. It's an urban fantasy with a lot of fabulism, and fabulism is something that turns some people off from stories, but personally I enjoy it, and even if you're usually don't, I think you will appreciate the relationships and the characters and their connections. The official summary of the first book is the worst way you can describe this book. On Goodreads it says that it's a story about Blue Sergeant, a girl that is raised in a very peculiar household and who from a very young age was told that if she's going to kiss her one true love, they're going to die. It sounds very sappy and romance focused, but I would say that it's the most slow burn book in terms of romance that I've ever read. The romances don't start to play out until the third book, and most of the relationships that are developing in the first 3 books are friendships and familiar relationships. The next book is The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzie Lee, which is also a book I've read in 2018 and loved. It is definitely a chosen families type of story because the protagonist's family doesn't treat him very well. It follows a boy named Henry Montague who was born a gentleman but was always acting ungentlemanly, which was always met with an aggressive disapproval of his father. Before immersing himself into the family business, Henry asks for a favor from his parents. He wants to go on the grand tour of Europe, and then he says that he's going to get serious. They let him go with his best friend named Percy, who's a biracial boy, also born a gentleman, and who happens to be Henry's biggest crush. It seems like the trip of Henry's dreams, but in the last moment he's told that his little sister Felicity is going to go with them because she needs to travel to her new boarding school in France. It is such a fun story that tackles a lot of important issues. The chosen family aspect is an incredibly important part of this story because Henry's family is terrible. His father is abusive and it's something that he's trying to cover up. It's also very relevant when it comes to other characters such as Percy, who's biracial and is not entirely accepted by society because of the color of his skin, and who's also harbors a secret which makes him even more unaccepted by his family. And when it comes to Felicity, who is a very young woman more interested in science and books and knowledge, she is rejected by her family as a woman that is strange and weird and that doesn't have a place in their world. Really enjoyed the story. It's very adventurous while still being focused on the characters. It's very long, but I really liked it. The other favorite series that I want to mention in this video is Written in Red series, or the other series by Anne Bishop. It's also an urban fantasy and it follows a young woman named Meg Carbon who is a blood prophet. Being a blood prophet, she already is an outcast in the world of humans and in the world of others. The others in this series are all these supernatural creatures that live among humans and actually dominate the world. Her talent is incredibly rare, which makes her a target in the human world. From a very young age she was imprisoned and caught for the sake of foretelling strangers' futures. She runs away and comes into a business district that is ruled by the others. There she finds a job among supernatural creatures and builds a new home for herself. It's a wonderful, action-packed story that spends a lot of time building relationships between characters. The others, or supernatural creatures, are described in such fascinating detail. I really enjoyed the approach that Anne Bishop took with supernatural creatures in general in this series. Meg is a very lovable character. I really enjoyed the feeling of home and family. I think it's very cozy and I highly recommend it. The last series that I want to recommend in this video, of course, is Six of Crows duology by Leigh Bardugo. It's a perfect book if you want to read about chosen family dynamics because it's about outcasts finding family. At the start of the novel, they're all on their own and they don't want to connect, but by going through certain situations they become closer and it brings them together. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about this book because everyone knows about it. If you love fantasy and you have still not read this series, what are you doing with your life? Get on it. It's amazing, you're going to love it. I think it's one of the best young adult fantasy series that exists at this point, and I really, really, really hold these two books dearly to my heart. It also is about a heist, and who doesn't love a good heist? That's all the books that I want to mention in this video. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you soon with my next video, but until then, bye!